So I'm Mark Darling, the Sustainability Programs Coordinator here at Ithaca College, and I'm going to talk with you now about trash, or as I like to call it, my trash talk. So this is your trash. On campus, we generate about 725 tons of trash a year. At least we did last year in 2011. That's about 725 Mini Coopers, to sort of put it into perspective for you, so you can think of what a ton is. It's a growing trend, and why is it a problem? Trash has been on the rise since 1960. It's sort of a result of an inconvenience from the convenience of our lives as they went along. What the problem is with it is it increases water pollution and air pollution, and now we've discovered greenhouse gas emissions. So the amount of trash we're producing has a much larger effect on the planet than we originally thought back when we started making our life more convenient back in 1960. We are in overshoot. Not doing this well. In the past 50 years, humans have consumed more materials than in all previous history. And it takes the Earth 15 months to replenish what we use in 1 year. And that's just renewables. There are things that we're removing from the Earth that we can't replace at all. What we've been doing and how we got here is the result of linear thinking. The sense that we've thought of materials, extraction from the planet, natural resources. We manufacture them, we put them in the store, people buy them, they use them up, they break, and they throw them away. And this isn't a natural system, this is an unnatural system. And it has sort of dominated our thinking, so that we end up with these places where our tax dollars have to subsidize the cheap extraction of resources, and then we subsidize the cleanup of manufacturing, or to regulate it so that it's at least not egregiously unsafe for us. It goes out to the consumer uses it, and then they throw it away, and once again our tax dollars are put into use to subsidize the disposal and the handling of trash, or that waste product. We've developed great systems for that. We've reduced some of the waste in a sense that we don't put it all in the landfill anymore. The major ways that we deal with it are through sorting and recycling, so that's getting the materials separated, bundled up, marketed back into the manufacturing stream, which does a better job than just leaving it to wither in a landfill. Composting, which is really just recycling of organic material. That's another way to call it recycling. Energy from waste is becoming a growing trend. Taking that waste, which is rich in petrochemicals, which we've used as the basis for a lot of our plastics and polymers, and burning it for energy. It's a one more step use of those resources, but it may not be the best allocation of resources. And the most common way to dispose of trash or waste is in landfilling. And we'll start talking about that in a little bit. But waste is a verb. Waste is what we do. Waste is not a thing, really, at least in my mind. It's a choice we make. Everything is just a material. It's a resource. It's a natural resource, or a resource that we've added value to. Convenience created an inconvenience. So this increase in materials that have to be disposed of has created inconvenience for us. So our convenience has created inconvenience. And it's what that graph shows from 1960 is that increase as a result of our convenience lifestyle, this sense of purchase it, do something with it, throw it away. If we continue to throw it away, we continue to have to extract. That keeps that paradigm, that linear system moving. Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us about this in 1960, that military-industrial complex. Bill McKibbins, in one of his books, mentions that quotes a document that says planned obsolescence is an important piece of this economy that we had created. And we're seeing that economy starting to reach the end of its life too. It's starting to overshoot. So that means we have to change our thinking. And probably the best way to change our thinking, in my mind, is to go to a triple bottom line approach, that sustainability piece. That's in the middle. That's where we balance social responsibility with environmental accountability and economic vitality. There's places where it's maybe not hitting that perfect sustainability in the center, but we need to work towards that. I really like this diagram because it gives you those areas. There's that big bullseye target, but you're still getting closer when you start to consider those things together. So when we talk about trash, it's really not trash, it's resources. It's just material out of place, or MOOP, as I like to call it. It all has value. Here's a list of the clean dozen. These are the top 12 categories of material that you'll find in our trash, in municipal solid waste. And a breakdown per million tons per year of what could be happening with that. It can be creating jobs. It has a value. It also has a market value. So in this money economy, the trading of these commodities actually has the monetary value that seems to be valued over the resource value. But it creates jobs. This also keeps this stuff from just sitting in the landfill, and toxicity was the first reason to start managing these things called waste, because we put them in that pile, we don't even know what's in there, and all sorts of nasty things came out. So we need to change our design paradigm, our way of thinking. And so the design paradigm for a product should be, if it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, refurbished, refinished, resold, recycled, or composted, then it should be restricted, redesigned, or removed for production. Pretty definitive way of saying that. This should be our new design paradigm. We need to think about what's going to happen through the whole life cycle of a product. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have this problem with waste. This is sort of what that system would look like. Instead of a linear system, a closed loop system, which is what all natural systems in our ecosystem are like. So it kind of makes sense for us to mimic that. But it's going to require us to do some things, to change some rules, to shift those subsidies. That means that government money from your tax dollars needs to go to renewables and redesign. We need to be committed to clean production. We need to be committed to efficient ways of distributing these materials. And really the key is that empowered consumer. Using critical thinking, using a triple bottom line approach, and working to force the market to do these things. So there's three things to think about, the three simple actions to take. I want to talk mostly about that right now. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. We've heard it over and over again. These are the simple actions that we can take, and I'm going to give some examples of what we can do with those. Reduce. Be a conscious consumer and consider the packaging and disposal options. Buy durable, repairable, reusable goods first and foremost. Use less stuff. That means we use less energy. You can also use this piece of an action to think about electricity, natural gas, and other forms of energy like transportation. Just cut back, use less. Our whole system's been predicated on using more. We'll kind of say, whoa, take a step back and use a little bit less. And in that striving for sustainability, to achieve that, in that thinking, integrate fiscal, environmental, and societal needs in decision-making and actions. So every time you make a purchase, think about where did it come from, what am I going to do with it, how long can I do that, and where is it going to go? And another piece of critical thinking is to question the assumptions that are out there. Recognize bias and power behind institutions, government, media, corporations, and our peers. That there's a whole lot of things out there influencing our decisions that aren't looking at a triple bottom line, but they tend to be looking at an economic bottom line for the few and maybe not for everyone. So using critical thinking, not following the peers because that herd is headed over the cliff. So being an individual and paying a little more attention to those actions. Reuse. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without, because once is not enough. So there's so many creative ways to reuse. It's part of, the reusable water bottle, plates, and things like that. But reuse also teaches practical skills. There's jobs created for people. It can provide, as the one graph showed, cost savings and create jobs, but it also has that market ability to sell that back and forth. And it replaces waste. So instead of wasting, we can keep it working. We don't have to extract any more natural resources. Reuse is number one in the clean dozen. The simplest, it creates the most jobs, it generates the most amount of money. And some examples of that, here on campus is OSCAR, the Office Supply Collection and Reuse Program. That's where you've got unwanted bric-a-brac in your office, file folders as we digitize. Rather than throwing it out or even putting it in the recycling, we're able to collect it and put it out there for other people to use. First on campus, and then once we can't use it on campus, we'll send it out to some not-for-profits that can find use for that. 3-ring binders have been a huge commodity for us to reuse on campus, to give to students, and then to send to not-for-profits off campus. Tioli is another one. We do this at the end of the year. We're going to try to do it in the winter, but we also have it, a little piece of it going on all the time. But take it or leave it is a place where you can take something you don't want. If someone else wants it, they can take it. No cost or anything like that. It's just sharing. It's just an exchange of goods, real simple and convenient. In the larger community, there's a few programs out there. There's the Finger Lakes Reuse Center, which takes in all sorts of household goods, furniture, building materials, computers, does some value added with some of them, but mostly just makes them available for anybody in the community at about half the retail price. And then downtown, you'll find the secondhand stores, particularly for clothing, cropping up all over the place. Trader K's was a starter. Now there's Patroon, Loose Threads. There's the typical old Salvation Army and things like that. All of these things keep those materials moving in the economy without having to use new resources to produce them. And then there's recycling. And I call recycling the gateway behavior, because it's the one thing and that one action where you have something in your hand and you have a decision to make. And if you can think with that triple bottom line, if you can think a little bit critically and just make that choice, put the paper or the bottle or the can into the recycling bin instead of putting it into the trash can. Because nobody's going to go in that trash after it, not for another 50 years at least. So just a quick walk through what can go in the recycling bin. Cardboard and mixed paper. That's pretty much anything that's made out of paper except paper towels, tissues, and paper cups. Metal cans and aluminum foil should be clean. You can put those in the bins. Number 1 and number 7, plastics. That's any plastic that's rigid and is smaller than a 5-gallon pail. Can go into our recycling bins and we can take that to the transfer station. Paper, milk and juice cartons. That's the little gable-topped things. Those can go in the recycling. They should go in the recycling, not in the compost, because they're coated in plastic and that doesn't break down. And all sorts of glass containers. That's containers that had bottles and containers that had liquids in them or other household products, but not glass containers like a glass. It's a different kind of glass and it doesn't recycle. So the things not to be in the bin here are plastic bags, styrofoam, drinking glasses, Pyrex, coffee pots. That ceramic doesn't go in that. There's not a market for that. That's one of those things that has to go someplace else. Paper cups can't go in. They have a plastic coating on them that screws up the recycling system. Tissues and napkins, because the fibers are so small, when they get into the recycling process, they just go away as waste in the water. And so they need to go into the trash for the moment. Hazardous waste should never go in, any sort of chemical, pesticide, herbicide, or something you're just not sure about. Electronics, computers, printers, cell phones, and the like, we have a recycling program for those, but they don't go in the bin. We'll have to find another way to get them from you. Compost is another type of recycling. Compost, because of rind, is a terrible thing to waste. It's classic composter humor. Food scraps and organic material are collected and processed. Much like recycling is picked up, it's sorted, it's sent to a plant, it's chopped up and then reintroduced into a product. Composting sort of does the same thing in that we collect it, process it, add some value to it, put it on the ground either for trees or for food, and new material comes out of that. So the things that you should do are you should educate yourself about sustainable actions, think about what you can do and act, involve others in those actions, make sustainable behaviors, habits, and participate in your community.